and welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie and this channel is chronicling my journey of living my best life with multiple chronic health conditions. Today is part 1 of the Cleveland Clinic trip. I'm just going to talk about the 2 doctor appointments I had on Monday, and then Saturday I will hopefully have the results of the rest of the tests that I will have done on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then I will share the results of that. So I had 2 doctor appointments on Monday. The first was an allergy immunologist, and it was a complete waste of time. It was worse than a complete waste of time. Basically, I was referred to this person when I saw the pulmonologist back the first time I came to Cleveland Clinic in August of 2022. I think it was August. And he wanted me to see the allergy immunologist because one of the things that is elevated on my blood work is my complement levels, which is an immune marker. And with autoimmune diseases, my rheumatologist says they only really worry if they're low, not if they're high. So it was kind of just like ignored and said that, oh, it could be allergies or something like that, but never looked into. So the pulmonologist wanted it looked into. I finally scheduled the appointment with the doctor I saw Monday, and it was basically the same thing. Oh, well, normally we're only concerned if it's low, and if it's elevated, it means it could be inflammation or infection somewhere in the body, and it can go up and down if that happens, but it's normally nothing that we treat. And mine's been elevated since 2021, I believe it is, after having never been elevated since we were tracking it starting in 2015. So it's not, he kept calling it like an acute phase reactant. And this isn't acute, like it's been going on for about 1.5 years now, almost 2 years. But yeah, so nothing was done, no lab work ordered, nothing of the sort. And it was again another appointment where the resident fellow, I'm not sure where she is in her training, came in and she was like, oh, this must be so frustrating because like you have these tests that are abnormal but doctors aren't looking into the cause. And then the doctor comes in and basically says, oh, it's probably an acute thing and it can go up and down depending on if you're fighting off an infection or there's inflammation somewhere in the body. So the exact same thing happened that always happens with doctors. I won't say always, normally happens with doctors. So nothing was looked into. I still don't know why my complements are elevated. It's really just one complement. So originally both the C3 and C4 were elevated, and then I believe the C4 has returned to normal and the C3 remains elevated. But apparently it happens with infection or inflammation, and we're just gonna go with why I have inflammation. I don't know. And my sed rate is elevated also, so the inflammation thing makes sense, but my sed rate's been elevated in the past without my complements being elevated, but I don't know. So yeah, that was a totally worthless appointment. Then I actually had time to come back to the hotel room, which never happens, so that was nice. I came back to the hotel for a couple hours before going back to see another pulmonologist who also works with dysautonomia. His name is Dr. Tonelli, and he also does research using the invasive cardiopulmonary exercise test, so he is familiar with preload failure and impaired oxygen extraction. And the thought was to see him to see if he thinks the invasive CPAT would be worth doing when I have the tracheal stent trial. So that appointment went really well. Like I said, he's knowledgeable about preload failure, so I wasn't attempting to educate him on it or anything, which was nice for a change. So long story short was he was asking, I forget how it came up, but he was like, are you hypermobile? And he was trying to like touch his thumb to his forearm, and I can easily do that on both hands. I do not think I technically meet the diagnostic criteria for hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but he did refer me to another rheumatologist who specializes in hypermobility. And I did schedule that for July, so now I'm hoping that everything that needs to be done can be done that week in July. But staying with the Dr. Tonelli appointment, basically I showed him the mixed venous oxygen from the right heart cath that I had done in October here at the Cleveland Clinic, and even he was like, oh yeah, wow, like, and I was like, yeah, like they won't change their notes or anything. But he was completely understanding. He knows that that is much too high for your mixed venous oxygen to be at the end of exercise and everything. And then I'm just gonna look, reading his note. So his notes probably, there's some inaccuracies, which isn't a big deal. It's just like the dates of like when I had pneumonia and whatnot. But his impression has like progressive dyspnea, likely related to preload insufficiency in the setting of autonomic dysfunction in the context of Ehlers-Danlos disease. And that right there is probably the most succinct, like, thing relating to all of my symptoms that have ever been written before. He goes on to say, the constellation of symptoms are typical of preload insufficiency, and this is supported by symptomatic improvement with Mestinon. He actually gave me an article on Ehlers-Danlos and dysautonomia, which I thought was really awesome. And he instantly had the thought about like the hypermobility. Even before, like, I didn't mention it, he just came up with that out of his own brain, which again, it's always nice to have a doctor who actually is sort of up to date and aware of all of these comorbid conditions. And he even said, like, even if you don't have hypermobile EDS, you can still have hypermobility spectrum disorder, and we still see all of these like connective tissue issues. And the tracheomalacia could indeed be due to an Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility type thing. And again, it was mentioned by one of my doctors where I live. In his note, he never mentioned it to me, nor was anything done about it. It wasn't investigated further. He says I use the compression stockings and the abdominal binder and stuff like that. So yeah, he just was a good appointment. I always hesitate to say that the doctor was good just because I've had episodes where the first few appointments go really well, and then all of a sudden the doctor's like, oh, you're just anxious. So I always hesitate, but he does seem like a good doctor. He said that he'll do the invasive CPAT, as I said, and to just let him know when it needs to be done, and he will fit me in, basically, because I asked how long it's scheduling out, and he said a few months, but again, I live out of state, so he said, like, let me know when you need it to be done, and I will fit you in, basically, which is awesome. So I'm currently trying to schedule the stent trial. I messaged the interventional pulmonologist. I was like, look, I have this rheumatologist appointment for hypermobility. It is scheduled for July 25th. Ideally, can we put the stent in on the 24th? We can do the invasive CPAT on the 25th or the 26th, take the stent out on the 27th, and then I can be on my way back home. So waiting for a response on that, but hopefully that is what's going to happen. And we'll see where it goes, I guess. Again, I'm not thinking there's going to be much to come. I did tell Dr. Tonelli that, like, the oxygen extraction is a big issue, that burning, like, my arms burn when I'm just brushing my teeth and stuff, and he said, like, if that continues, he has no trouble, like, ordering me to have a muscle biopsy, and I told him that the neurologist wouldn't order one, and he's like, no, like, I'll do that, like, that's not a big deal, like, we'll do what needs to be done type thing. So again, positive first impressions, but I'm a cynic now. I just don't trust doctors. But so far so good as far as that goes. I've had the tilt table test and the QSART. That was done today. Tomorrow I get some blood work and an echocardiogram, a bubble study done. I am currently in the process of doing the SIBO test. So I will eventually have results from there. I did get the genetic testing that was having issues resulted. I'll probably record that video while I'm sitting here in between the SIBO breath test things. But yeah, that is going to do it for Cleveland Clinic Part 1. And I will talk to you guys on Saturday, wrapping up hopefully the test that I've had. And yeah, talk to you guys then. Bye, guys.